And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi there, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook for Wednesday, November 26, 2025. And this day before Thanksgiving, we see extensive ice across the Arctic coast, especially Beaufort Sea coast is iced in, and it's really filling in too along the Chukchi Sea coast. Still some open water off of Point Lay, but again, that area will be filling in rather quickly, and we've also seen the ice expand across Norton Sound, and with colder temperatures that have been in place, this ice will continue to slowly grow and expand. We might see a moderation in temperature with a low pressure that tracks up from along Bristol Bay on up into the Chukchi Sea by Friday morning. Will moderate temperatures a bit, especially along areas of the Seward Peninsula. Looking at the map late tonight, we have an area of low pressure coming out of the North Pacific that'll cross the Alaska Peninsula into Bristol Bay early on Thanksgiving Day morning. Ahead of it, we have a stream of moisture along the secluded front that's giving wind and rain to Kodiak Island, and that rain will be along coastal areas of Lower Cook Inlet, the eastern Kenai, Prince William Sound, but once it gets up into the mountains, the Kenai and Chugach Mountains, it's going to be in the form of some moderate to heavy snow, a wet snow at that, because temperatures are going to be moderating above freezing on Thanksgiving Day across the Kenai Peninsula. Meanwhile, generally drier weather is expected for Thursday across the Panhandle, though there will be some rather brisk east-northeasterly winds as a result of this building high pressure over the Yukon and Northwest Territories. It'll likely max out around 1046 millibars on early Thanksgiving Day. And then as we look to the west, there's the low pressure beginning to lift out of Bristol Bay. It'll come across the lower Yukon, Kuskokwim valleys, and then the Seward Peninsula into the lower Chukchi Sea by Friday. High still out there over northwest Canada. Generally dry conditions expected again on Thanksgiving Day for the Panhandle, even up toward Yakutat. But it'll be wet along the coast, Cape Suckling down through the Kenai coast with lingering showers around Kodiak Island. But by the time we get into Friday, there's another low impulse that comes north. It'll just kind of re-energize the coastal rains and some mountain snows here from the eastern Kenai up along the areas surrounding Prince William Sound into the northeastern Gulf Coast. And then here's the hint of a stronger, there's going to be a couple of low pressures come up out of the North Pacific Saturday into Sunday. Two of them. One of them will be coming up south of the Aleutian chain, and then another one, a wet, warmer one, is going to come up out of the North Pacific into the Gulf later Saturday and into Sunday. And that system will have wider impacts, moderate to heavy rain and snow along with stronger gusty winds. So stay tuned to later forecast, especially anywhere along the Gulf Coast and Panhandle. For Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, north winds 15-20 knots generally speaking, inner channels, waves 3-4 feet, Lynn Canal, Stevens Passage 2-3 feet down here off of Ketchikan, Metlakatla. Outside the outer coast, near shore waters, winds will be easterly around 20 knots, though locally higher out toward Cape Suckling, 35-knot gales. Waves generally 6 feet, but as high as 12-13 feet out there toward Cape Suckling. On Friday, winds are going to be more northerly. Inner channels, Lynn Canal, Stevens Passage, waves 2 feet, and an easterly wind at 15 knots here lower Dixon Entrance outside of Metlakatla and Ketchikan with waves of 3 feet. The outer coast winds increase a bit, 20-25 knot easterly winds, 30 to 35 knots, especially outside of Yakutat Bay toward Cape Suckling. Waves that way 10 to 15 feet, otherwise 7 to 8 feet outside of Cross Sound and down off of Prince of Wales Island there. For Thanksgiving Day, strongest winds will be out over the northwestern Gulf, outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance toward Kayak Island and along the eastern Kenai and northeast of Kodiak Island, easterly 35-knot gales with waves running as high as 13 to 16 feet. Prince William Sound, east winds to 30 knots, waves 7 to 8 feet there. And then coming down the length of Cook Inlet, northeast to east winds 25 to 30 knots, waves 6-7 feet, but as high as 8 to 10 feet there west of Homer and toward Kamishak Bay. For Friday, 35 to 40 knot easterly gales outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, waves 13 to 14 feet. East winds within Prince William Sound 25 knots, waves around 5 feet. And then coming down along Cook Inlet, north to northeast winds. Upper Cook Inlet, 20-knot north winds with 4 or 5 foot waves. But as we get out around Anchor Point and west of Homer, northeast winds of 25 knots, waves 6 to 7 feet. For Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, Kodiak Island, variable winds around 20 knots. On the east side of Kodiak Island, east winds 15 knots, Shelikof Strait with waves a few feet. Generally, though, the Alaska Peninsula, we expect variable winds at 10 knots, waves 4 or 5 feet on the North Pacific side and 2 to 3 feet on the Bering side. Winds could briefly be southeast to south in here through Bristol Bay, with the low center taking a track sort of like this up toward the west end of Bristol Bay around Kodiak. But as far as for Friday, winds will be north-northwest 20 knots, Shelikof Strait, east side of Kodiak Island. And then as we go down the Alaska Peninsula, northeast to variable winds at 10 knots, becoming easterly 15 to 20 knots, either side there, Cold Bay to False Pass. The Aleutians on Thanksgiving Day will generally have north to northeast winds around 15 knots. And then Friday, as that stronger low in the North Pacific approaches from the south, that's going to cause east to northeast winds to increase to 30 knots across much of the Aleutian chain. And then along the southwest coast, northeast winds 10 to 15 knots out of Kuskokwim and Bristol Bays with waves 2 to 3 feet. The Pribilovs, north winds of 15 knots with 4 or 5 foot waves. Along the lower Yukon coast, strongest winds will be north of Hooper Bay up through Imanik. And this area could see northeast winds of 25 knots. Easterly winds out of Norton Sound as high as 30 knots, but there's a lot of ice in place there. And for Friday, variable winds 10 knots within Kuskokwim, Bristol Bay, waves only around a foot. Coming up along the lower Yukon coast into Norton Sound, that wider expanse between Nome and Imanik. Southwest to south winds 15 knots, because that low is going to be all the way up into the lower Chukchi Sea by Friday. And temperatures should moderate along this area here of the west and southwest coast with that low lifting northward. Now on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, brisk east winds around the Bering Strait, 25 to as high as 35 knots coming out of Kotzebue Sound. A lot of ice there, though, Kotzebue Sound, Norton Sound, but where there is open water, 4 foot waves south of the Bering Strait to the north side of St. Lawrence Island. Coming up along the Lisburn Peninsula, all the way heading through Utqiagvik to Kaktovik. Generally east winds 25 knots, locally 30 knots, but again, a lot of ice. The ice is just packed in here along the Beaufort Sea coast and along the Chukchi Sea coastline. And for Friday, winds will continue 30 knots from the east in the vicinity of Kaktovik, but look for easterly winds of 20 knots, Prudhoe Bay through Utqiagvik down through Wainwright and Cape Lisburn. Those winds become more southeasterly because, again, that low pressure is going to be sitting about right here in the lower Chukchi Sea. Southeast winds of 25 knots out of Kotzebue Sound coming off of Shishmaref. Where there is any open water, waves 4 to 5 feet. And then along the west side of the Seward Peninsula, Wales, Port Clarence, southeast winds of 15 knots, but there is a trough that's going to be lying between there right through the Bering Strait. On the other side of the trough, winds are westerly on Friday at 15 knots on the north side of St. Lawrence Island, with waves of 3 to 4 feet Friday at Gamble and Savunga.